What up, what up, what up, y'all? Welcome back to Genius As Fuck. A little J, big AF. I'm Solo, and this is.
What's going on, Slim?
And today we're going to talk about toxicity, everybody's absolute favorite. You know, folks literally putting that in their bios now, like that's a badge of honor. Like, I think it's well past time we broke this one down. So, you want to kick it off, or you want me to?
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead. I'll play off you right now.
I got you, fam. But something I've been seeing recently, just to piggyback off my own statement, is that a lot of people have been using toxic or toxicity or anything kind of surrounding that, just like literally objectively negative shit, as some sort of characteristic rather than a character flaw. Like,
Okay.
I've seen it a lot on Twitter profiles and then like Tinder and stuff like that. So a lot of what I'm seeing is women doing it. I'm not saying it's just women, but almost exclusively it's been women and more feminine gay dudes. And like, I kind of want to know what that's all about. I want to know why. I mean, obviously, this is going to be posted on YouTube, or it's already on YouTube. Hey, YouTube, what's going on? What's good? Love you, miss you, bye. But I've been wanting to have that conversation with somebody for a long time because I mean, I work too much to really get into social media proper. I mean, this is it right here. This and when I post it on YouTube, that's my fucking social media right fucking there. But like, I'm not on Twitter like that. I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. And if I use Facebook, it's for memes, right? So I don't know
Right.
if there was like a song that came out, like some social zeitgeist shift that got us to the point where we're thinking, hey, everybody should pretend like they're as toxic as possible. And if you can't handle that, that's your problem. It's like, no, dude, I know it's a meme, but we do live in a society. You kind of have to not be a piece of shit all the time. You can't just roll into being a wild piece of shit. That's not a good look. That's not a good look for anybody. But yeah, that's what I've been. That's kind of what I've been seeing a lot recently. Instead of people avoiding toxicity and the a more glamorized version of just negativity in general, they've been gravitating towards it, and I've been really curious as to what the fuck.
So I can even add to that. I'm not sure how much you watch Netflix or if you watch Netflix at all, but there is an actual show that I saw on there where apparently there were people. I can't remember exactly the exact details, but they were playing a game, basically. And so
Yeah,
the game was to see, can you get people to fall in love with like a fake profile type of character in order to win money? And so if they fall in love with you, you win. But if they figure out that you're fake, then you lose. And it's that type of like, that's toxic.
oh yeah,
Like that's the culture that's being promoted on Netflix. Is like, hey, I think it was in that little top 10 trending thing for like at least a solid month, where
yeah.
people were watching this and just kind of feeding into it. And so I think that's like part of the culture thing that is kind of shifted right now, is that we have this idea that, well, nothing's good, so let me just steer right into the shit.
I think
Like, yeah,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
go on. I basically I think that there's a currency to our culture now, basically, and I've heard that before. So that's not me just pulling out my $2 words to dust off in front of y'all. But like, I've heard that there's like currency to a culture, and to each culture everyone has a different type of currency. Sometimes it's literal currency, like if you were talking about, upper echelon as far as finances is concerned, type people. Their cultural currency is literally money. But then for other people, like just young internet at large, it's views, it's clicks, it's I seeing you, and that brings you back to a psychological lens where it's like, hey, everybody wants attention 9 out of 10 times. There's obviously outliers and people that just want to be alone. I get that. But most people in the entire world want attention. Now, I hate to say it like this because it's going to sound really shitty, but I'm being very blatant. Most people aren't good at shit. And that's not a problem, really, until you start to realize that the same people that aren't good at shit are the same people who are going to still want attention. And if they can't get positive attention for their skills and attributes and talents and things that they put into the world in a positive way, they're just going to look for negative attention. So, like, I and I know you've seen it. I know you work in a school. I've seen it, and I've only worked in a kindergarten. I obviously wasn't my kindergarten as I beat the little ass. That's not true. I didn't mean that. That's a joke. Nobody fucking call nobody. Don't hit, don't hit kids, y'all. That's fucked up. That was a joke. But like, I've seen like fucking what maybe 10 to 14 year olds dress like their mom on a Saturday night, and I'll leave it at that. Like, come on, dude. And I know they're comfortable with that. I'm not saying like, oh well, it's time to start sexualizing children. Literally, no one's saying that I want to talk to at least. I'm saying we know that sexualizing children is negative. We know that there are clothes that are more sexual in nature than they are neutral. To put it kind of in those terms. So when you get to a point where you are dressing your child to look more sexual rather than more neutral, more secular, more, just normal, then you are actively, even if they chose it, I mean, kids choose dumb shit all the time. I was once a kid, if you can believe that. And I broke my front teeth. I still have that shit to this day because I thought it would be fucking absolutely poggers to throw my front foot into the spokes of my bike going downhill like a dumb shit. Ain't shit for like 3 straight feet and have not gotten my teeth fixed since. I gotta live with that dumb shit, right? Kids make dumb decisions.
Right.
It happens. It's not fun, but that's why there are adults there to make sure that they don't make as toxic decisions. But what happens when you're taught a good portion of your life, and this is kind of getting more specific to certain people, but it is something that happens. What happens when you end up in a situation where you're raising a child up, right? You raise this child
Right.
up, and they have been able to do borderline everything they want to do, the positive and the negative, but they've all been treated as positive. Eventually, they're going to develop really, really poor, damn near antisocial habits, right? And that's going to lead into adulthood. And congratulations, you just raised a little sociopath. Like, that's, and that's where we get into a point where you literally are putting on toxicity and everything that comes along with it as a positive trait. God forbid you're like an attractive person or something, because that's another cultural currency that we have, especially with Instagram and Twitter and all these like Instagram models and this that, and the other. People showing off
Right.
their life like all day, every day, and you gotta look perfect. Gotta look perfect. That's toxic in and of itself because you don't look like that really, but they need to think you do so that you can say that everybody else looks worse than you, and that's how you justify the situation that you're in. Like, oh, I got this house because I'm better than you. I look better than you. I got more stuff than you have. And you can be just a piece of shit, the whole fucking time. You can just be garbage because you have now been justified and validated more so in the way that you've been toxic to the world at large, basically.
So I think it goes back also to like, okay, how do we define toxic? Because not everyone has the same definition, right?
Absolutely.
our version of toxic between you and me is pretty similar, I would say.
Yeah.
But then there's people that don't see what they're doing as toxic. I know you don't get into sports, but I'm going to give a sports example because it's something that happened recently.
Cool,
There
cool,
is an
cool. I'm gonna zone
NBA
out for
player.
about 10 minutes. You go off.
Well, I mean, you'll be able to pick up on the main gist of it. But like, there's an NBA player, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now he starts dating this. I can't remember if she's an Instagram model or whoever she is. Um, Brittany Renner or something like that. I can't remember what her exact name is. Starts dating him, marries him. The kid is like 22, 21, 22, 23 years old. So he's very early 20s.
Yeah.
Marries him, gets pregnant, divorces him immediately.
God damn.
Taking advantage of the fact that he's in the NBA, gets
Yeah.
$1 million contract, and so now she can get child support. She saw
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. She went back and forth publicly saying that she did nothing wrong. And so for me, I'm like, okay, if there's no clear definition, but we get to just make this thing up as we go, we need to back all the way up for a minute. As a culture, we have to define right now what is toxic and what is not. So, according to you, given that extreme example,
Yeah.
what is toxic to you? What behaviors do you want to classify as toxic, or what thoughts do you want to classify as toxic?
I think I'm gonna hit that on a few different levels. Three that I can think of right now. Hold me to that.
Okay.
Global, societal, and then personal. Is that cool?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. On a global scale, what would be considered toxic? And I'm not speaking on like the internet or anything. I'm talking like global as in universal, rather. That's a better way to say it. So like this will be toxic no matter what culture you're in, no matter what state, country, continent, whatever. 9 out of 10 times, this would be considered as a toxic attribute. Um, Universally, I think a toxic attribute could probably be boiled down to anything that is perceived as negative in general, really. Like since it has to be so macro in that way, it would just be anything that's negative. Like if I went to Zimbabwe, let's put Africa on the map, and I just sock the shit out of first person I see. Hop off the plane, welcome back, bitches. Bow, right in the mouth, right? I think that's I think that that would be considered pretty fucked up. But if in my mind, like, because the personal, like the way it affects me personally is pretty much not at all, or maybe even in a positive way. And I think that's what makes that not just negative, but toxic. Because toxicity typically, and this will kind of bleed into the rest of these, which is why I'm trying to establish it like this. Toxicity typically affects like comes from one or more people and affects other people negatively, but to the benefit of the first party, the first person or first group of people. So if I were to blow up a car with me in it and like three other people, that's not toxic. That's just dumb and negative, right?
Right.
But if I were to steal somebody's wallet and I thought that that was just a perfectly fine thing to do, hey, it's my money now. Doesn't really matter. Fuck it. That's toxic. That's me thinking I deserve that just because I can get that from somebody and not at all thinking about how that affects that other person. So
So
on a
with that, there's like the selfishness aspect in there. So selfishness might be a
yeah, definitely. Like absolutely. I
okay.
won't even say selfish. I'll try to keep it in my wheelhouse with psychology. I'll say it is psychologically considerable to be egocentric. There we go. Because selfish kind of has a lot of vagueness to it, but egocentrism is something that is fairly specific. And that's just to put a finer point on it to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. Like
Yeah.
babies, like just to kind of clarify for any audience, babies are egocentric by nature because they absolutely have to be. It is 100% a necessity for an infant to be egocentric because if they were trying to be altruistic or giving of themselves without concern about any harm that may befall them, then they would die because they're an infant and they can't do shit. So as an infant, you have to be egocentric. And then
Right.
as the parent or the guardian, the guider, whoever it may be, you have to then see that infant turn into a baby, turn into a toddler, turn into a child, et cetera, and kind of slowly take away that egocentrism. Because I know plenty of kids in like kindergarten and stuff that I taught, that other people taught, that clearly did not get that guidance path or the path out of egocentrism as a mindset, and that in and of itself ends up kind of messing people up. Like the person themselves are fine because it is selfish in its nature. Egocentrism is like as selfish as you can possibly be because you are concerned about the self and the self only. That is narcissistic. That is or has attributes of narcissism. It has attributes that constitute into sociopathy and psychopaths and stuff like that. That's all that shit that we always talk about in media and stuff that make the best villains and everything. But in real life, on your day to day, seeing these people, it's not funny. It's not charismatic or anything. It sucks. We've all met that person that cuts you off in traffic, almost leaves you off in a ditch, and then peels out. You know, nobody likes that guy. They don't function in a normal society. So on a universal scale, I would say it would be negativity coupled with egocentrism would
Okay.
be toxicity in general, just across the board.
Okay.
In a societal aspect, I would probably say that would be a little bit more difficult. I mean, they get more difficult as you go because you have to add so many different eccentricities that come into cultures and subcultures and blah blah blah. But societally, I think it would be the mores and values that are set up by that society being broken to benefit one or more parties that are acting in an egocentric way to the
So,
detriment of anybody
quick,
else.
quick question for that. So, based on the different societies that we have, that can the toxic that definition can change. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely,
It
yeah,
can
yeah,
vary.
yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Because let's take an example. Just this is the one that's going to lose our one greatest fan. We love you so much. There they go. But we're gonna like let's take America as it stands right now. Right, you have the left party, like whoever's on the left party and whoever's on the right party. I'm not going to say Democrats and Republicans because then you got to get into, well, what constitutes as a Democrat, blah 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 blah. Like it muddies the water too much. So you got the left side and the right side. Those cultures both inhabit the same country, the same states, the same cities, sometimes even the same streets and households. So you can't very well say that they're literally the same, even though they're in the same area, because you could bring up a topic of discussion, put it in front of them, and like two different people, one on the left, one on the right, might have completely different views, and they might be considered toxic. Excuse me, they might be considered toxic to one another. I think that's where the societal aspect comes into it, where you have to really think about how what you do as a person or what your group does as their society or societal group, depending on how big it is, I guess, how that affects the world around you. Because there are plenty of people, I'm going to tentatively say myself included, that think that some people on the right side of our Overton window divide are doing things that they're toxic to the nation. Is that fair? Is that unfair? I think it's fair to say it. I don't think it's fair to say it as like gospel, because there are plenty of people that are on the right side that think that what they're doing is the only way to keep America running. It's the only way to keep everything, as it should be. Then there are people on the left that think the exact opposite, but still feel like they think that's the way that America should be or how it's going to function or whatever. And like, even if we have even these competing societies still and whatever similarities they may have, there might be one or more major differences between the two that suddenly they deem as being toxic just because the other person acted on it, or the other side, quote unquote, acted on it. And I think that's where you end up in that situation where you're like, well, I'm not being toxic, they're being toxic. Well, we're not being toxic, you're being toxic or negative or bad or whatever it may be. But I think the difference between being toxic and just being bad is that if you're like, let's say you're a bad kid. If you're a bad kid,
Yeah.
you might be doing dumb shit just to do dumb shit. Yeah, it makes you feel good. Yeah, you're getting attention for it, but it's not like actually benefiting you in any way. But if
Not
you're
at all.
like, but if you're a kid and you're shoplifting, that's still bad, but you're also getting whatever you shoplifted for. So they might, Walmart or whatever might be like, oh, we have this culture of people that come in here and they're stealing our goods that we paid for. Like, that's toxic to them. That is, corroding their ability, or eroding, excuse me, eroding their ability to create profit off the goods that they paid for. So that would be literally toxic to them. But
And
what if
so
you
that's
just
kind
needed,
of like, go ahead,
was
bro.
up? Oh, what if you needed that, like whatever that kid stole? What if they needed that for like food or to sell so they could have money to go to school or something? I don't know, But like, these are the things that happen, and we kind of come down on toxicity in such a way where it's like, oh, that's toxic. You're toxic. This is toxic. I'm toxic. Ha ha. Ha. Like, and it becomes so equal parts ubiquitous and just vague that it almost loses its entire meaning despite everybody knowing exactly what you're talking about. And that's what gets me, I think. I think that's where I end up like, okay, we can't even tell when people are being actually shitty human beings anymore because now everybody's a shitty human being. And just to quickly touch on the personal aspect so I can get off of that for good, like that's the one-on-one shit. That's like, the father that leaves the home because fuck it. I don't want to deal with this, not my problem. It's like, that's toxic. Right? And it's something of a culture because there are multiple people across the globe that do that. There, that's the friendships um where you have one friend that's always buying stuff for the other friend, or always picking up the other friend and taking them on rides here and there, always, entertaining the other friend. And that one friend's just absorbing all of it. And that's toxic. It's the fucking relationships where one party is putting all their love and care and compassion into the other person, and the other person's just absorbing it and giving nothing back and taking it as granted.
So
It's
that right there is literally like part of what I was gonna like even mention is like, so now it's not just that one side is being toxic, it's that there's now two sides or even more sides. So it's not just, hey, this one person's being toxic, it's that there's toxicity on both sides.
absolutely.
And so even when like people say, oh, well, this person was being toxic, well, do you recognize the toxicity in your own behaviors? Like,
I think
do you recognize that what you're doing can be damaging? Are you able to like look at yourself and say, hey, this is not something that's good for building a friendship, building a romantic relationship, building a business partnership? Like there's all
I
different
think,
types of relationships, and they determine like they require different levels of like professionalism, responsibility, all this other stuff, so that you
yeah,
don't end up with something that's toxic and dangerous to both parties.
I think that would be a good way to fold into the next point of and here's the one where we lose that one fan yet again. Um, Toxic masculinity versus toxic, not even versus, because it's not like a no us, no them, thing, but toxic masculinity and toxic femininity specifically. Not necessarily men and women, but things that are considered masculine and things that are considered feminine in our culture specifically. I think that's really worth talking about. And everybody and their fucking mom talks about toxic masculinity, but I think only really fucking like up their own ass MGTOW types, and then ABBA and Preach maybe are the only people I've ever heard talk about toxic femininity. So I want to hit on it, but with a level head and not, attacking anybody or like, oh well, they think men are so bad. This is what women do. But I think men need to be held accountable for the things that they do as men. Masculine people need to be held accountable for the things that they do as masculine people. But the same thing is true for women and feminine people. So you want to get into that real quick?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the main thing that we're trying to talk about is that if we're really trying to become a country that embraces equality across the board, then you can't just say, hey, men are being toxic. But before we even get to that point, I want to do something real quick just so we don't scare off any of our feminine listeners. We
Let's
can
go.
own up to some masculine quality or masculine things or some things that men do that are toxic. Like we can do
Oh,
that right
let's
now.
go. I'm so
I
ready.
can I can name this right now. This is personal. And to be honest with you, I don't really care to mention. These people aren't going to figure out who he is, but if they do, I still don't care. My dad
Yeah,
left or abandoned or whatever you want to call it
definitely.
at whatever age I was. Toxic behavior
Absolutely.
at the like toxic behavior to the point where as a young child he calls on the phone and I'm running to hide in the bathroom.
Ugh,
I don't have to talk to him. That level of toxicity is not okay.
not
And
at
there are
all.
men who still do that. So if you're doing that shit, yeah, you're toxic as fuck. And I really want to punch you in the fucking face. Just kidding. No violence.
Also, that's a whole nother thing that's considered toxically masculine. Like I had somebody, like we're still talking about dudes right now. We're just gonna shit on dudes rapid fire for a little while, and then we'll get to like the actual comparisons. But I had a lady, and I can't remember who it was. It's not like a friend of mine or anything. But I had a lady explain to me that a lot of male friends of women think that whenever a woman tells them a story about how they were assaulted, sexually assaulted, or worse, most of the dudes, first thing they say is like, "Where's he at? I'll go beat his ass. I'll kill him. I'll shoot him. I'll stab him. I'll this. I'll that. Whatever." And it's immediately just violent. And from what I've been told, that's really not what most women want you to do. And a lot of times, whatever happened in the past at some point. So it's like it's so long ago. If you beat them up or whatever, it's like past the statute of limitations. You just go to jail because like they're not thinking about the actual uh, perpetrator as the catalytic event. They're thinking about you just went up to this stranger's house and decked him in front of his wife and kids. That's gonna look bad, way worse on you than it's gonna look on anybody else. So I think it's just to jump off from what you were saying. I think it's kind of um, I think it kind of is a toxically masculine trait to immediately resort to violence over a lot of things. Now, certain points there are times where people want men to be more violent than they want to be. I've been in that scenario a lot of times, and almost every time it's been a woman or a really, really old black dude. And that's just funny to me. But like I think I think that we can say, and maybe this is how we'll transition or segue into talking about both of them. I think that resorting to violence as your first option instead of thinking it out and forming a proper mode of action is probably toxically masculine. But I think that weaponizing like physical violence of toxically masculine people is a form of toxic femininity. And that's
Oh
something
yeah.
I've never heard anybody talk about.
And so I'm going to go ahead and transition us. I'm going to hit on one more man thing and I'm going to transition us.
Let's
Watch
go.
this. Watch this right here. Toxic masculinity is any man endangering a child, a minor or a child, in a way that is damaging to them, and then not owning up to your mistakes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or not even like pretending like you had nothing to do with something that happened to a minor or a child. You are toxic. You are an endangerment to society. In that same regard, a woman who points the finger at a man and says, you were endangering this child or you were doing something to this child, and immediately points the finger with no knowledge of what's going on and just starts saying, oh, he was being inappropriate with a child. That is also toxic because there are men that work in fields with children.
Yep.
And all it takes is for one accusation to come across the board.
Real quick. I
Yep.
know what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
I'm going to clarify because the way you put those two together might have come off a little wrong. Basically, if a man endangers a child, that's obviously toxic. But if somebody accuses a man of endangering a child just because he happens to be in proximity of children, that's also incredibly toxic.
My fault. I should have
You,
clarified that.
no,
A
you're
man
good. You're good.
who has worked with children, who is clear of all wrongdoing, who is being singled out because he is a man working with children, that is toxic.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Like,
helping me to clarify that.
I, I just don't want you to catch any more shit on some toxic shit, frankly. But like we both been there. You more so than me, but we've for anybody listening, we both worked in fields with children. You know, he works as a teacher. I have worked as a teacher in the past. I worked in nurseries and things of that nature. And I mean, the folks I work with know me and have known me for years by this point. Everybody knows I'm great with the kids that I work with. You know, the kids in my class under my purview love me. I love my kids. Plain and simple, straight up, no holds barred. But anybody on the outside looking in, you know, maybe seen a few too many Lifetime movies or something, they and I mean you too, I would imagine, like they immediately start thinking something's up. Oh, and this kind of goes into the racist shit too, but you know, whatever. I'm not gonna touch on racism this time. I want to kind of steer out of that so we don't turn into the racism podcast. But it kind of gets to that point where it's like, oh, big black dude, tiny child, usually like light skin, black, white. I don't think I've ever had to work with an Asian kid. Now I think about it out loud. That's weird. Hispanic, whatever. And they're just going through a list of shit in their mind that I could be doing. When you see me trying to help this kid with crayons, what could I put like in real time, in real life? What could I possibly be doing if you see me out in the open? Like I'm not like behind closed doors or anything because again, they don't want you to do that, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to put anybody
Exactly.
in line at disease or anything. But the same way to continue the juxtaposition, the same way a lot of men don't know a lot of women walk around in the nighttime with their keys in their fist, or with their hand on their cell phone and 911 typed in just in case something happens, or they feel like they have to walk with another guy, or anything like this. They won't walk in between, or they won't allow a guy to walk in between the only exit to a room and themselves. Like these things that most guys don't typically realize about most women. Most women don't realize about guys that we can't say the phrase, literally the phrase, "Oh yeah, I love children," because like that can be immediately clipped. I'm very aware I can be clipped just now. I'm just not popular enough. But I'm sure when I'm like in my 50s and rich and famous, somebody will be like, "This guy loves children," and I'll be immediately thrown in jail, and that's fine. But you can't say that as a dude. And some dudes are going to be like, "Oh, you're reaching, you're reaching." Some guys know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about, though, because it comes off icky to some people. It comes off weird.
It
It's
really
like
does,
you
because
can't. Oh,
I can even give you a real life example real quick. And sorry to cut you off.
no, you're
I
good.
literally yesterday, while I was at work, saw a woman pick up a child in her arms, give him a hug, and start carrying him down the hallway.
Damn, that's bold.
I mean, there was nothing wrong about that, right?
Yep.
Imagine it the imagine it the other way around now.
Yep.
Guy picks up a little girl in his arms, gives her a hug, and starts walking with her down the hallway.
Yep.
There are two different views on that. And it's all based on a toxic mindset.
Yeah.
Now, is it something that has happened where guys have broken trust? Yes. Is there a thing of here where women have broken trust? Yes. But here's the thing. There have been many women in the educational field who have broken that trust more than men. Guess why? Because there's more women working in the educational field in general.
Bro.
Just saying, you don't hear stories about a you hear a lot more stories with women getting caught up in scandals with high school kids and doing things none of my business,
Dude,
but
I
of a
got an
scandalous
example.
nature.
I got an example for that one right now. I had a
Go for
teacher,
it.
again, I won't say any names, wasn't even my teacher. She was just like what's that fucking class called? It's not even a real class. It's just like a class in the middle of the day for 30 minutes where you can just work on homework or do whatever the
Like
fuck.
advisement type thing.
Yeah, basically. Like all different folks in the class. And I mean, I'm in high school. I'm pubescent as hell. I'm rock hard 99% of the time. And 1% of the time, I'm slightly less rock hard. So this lady got, the titties. She's got a really nice face, got an ass that won't quit, very, very well built body. And, she's got that MILF vibe going on about it that people of that age really like. And I'm not gonna say she was hitting on me. Although what I'm gonna say next is gonna make me sound a lot more credible in saying that I think she might have been, because the year after I left, she made it. Finally got out of that school and became a school superintendent, whatever the fuck they call it, on the school, not superintendent, on the school board or whatever. And and it came out very shortly thereafter that she had a sexual relationship with a kid that was exactly my age when I knew her, in the same type of class scenario. And I was like, whoa, that could have been me. And I don't say that in like a, ooh, nice sort of way. I say that in like a, I could have been statutorily raped. And I didn't even think about that. In my mind, that would have been perfectly fine because men aren't socialized into thinking, hey, if an older woman comes on to you, that's bad. That's just as bad as if an older man comes on to you, or if an older man comes on to a girl in your age range, because they shouldn't be doing that. Shit, my dad went to prom with one of his teachers. That's a story he's told me like half a dozen times. Went to fucking, like, not like, oh yeah, it'll be cute, whatever. We're friends of the family or something. Like, no, he asked his teacher out, took her to prom, and then had sex with her. like that is something he has told me so many times as a proud story of his. Like I don't know if his mom knew my grandmother. I'm not sure if she knew, but my granddad knew, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not getting that story wrong. It's like, dude, that I mean, you consented, but you can't because you're a kid, so that's statutory. But nobody cares. And that's toxic femininity. Not to say that that's like women or feminine beings their own brand of toxicity. And I think that's one thing we really need to get off of, just to kind of steer it a little bit this way. We really need to get off of toxic masculinity being or meaning that men are toxic. Because one, that's not what it was intended to mean. But now, since the internet and nobody knows shit about shit anymore, that's what they kind of kind
It's
of
an umbrella
unjust.
statement.
Yeah, like they just immediately like, oh well, he I don't know, he's punching a fucking punching bag. Oh, he's just being a fucking bro. He's being a toxic man. It's like there is nothing, literally nothing inherently toxically masculine about punching a bag with punching in the title. Like nothing at all. And there's nothing toxically feminine about insert example here. Anyway, point is, like, being a woman is not inherently toxic. Having feminine traits is not inherently toxic. Having masculine traits are not inherently toxic. But there are ways that those traits can be observed by whoever is the observer as toxic. And I think we really need to change the cultural zeitgeist to get back to that point where we stop thinking, oh, he is a toxic man, and start thinking the traits that he's and attributes that he's displaying right now are toxic and could be attributed to what he deems as his warped perception of masculinity, and vice versa for feminine people.
And so, going back to what you were talking about a little bit at the beginning about how one person, like, you see something being toxic, and then people just kind of accept it and they start being toxic, and you start seeing it everywhere. So, here's the very, very basic example that you see in a typical society, right?
Yeah,
Toxic, a man exhibits some toxic behaviors, gets a girl pregnant, decides she doesn't want to stick around, right?
yeah,
She then has a son who she teaches that men are toxic. So what does he do? He believes himself to be toxic. So he exhibits toxic behaviors.
yep,
And so now we have a cycle.
yep,
Or it could be the other way, where she has a daughter and she teaches her men are toxic. Look at what they do. So it's the embracing of toxicity that's an issue. And it's not just a man or a masculine issue. It's not just a woman or a feminine issue. It's that there are toxic behaviors across the board. And we need to examine those in ourselves and be able to say, hey, I was wrong here. Like, I decided that my emotions were more important than your emotions.
definitely.
So I decided, you know what? Forget you. That's a toxic behavior.
Absolutely. And I think you just barely touched on something right there, and that would be the accountability of it, and that being kind of the antidote to toxicity. A lot of this boils down to, like, a lot of toxic behaviors boil down to a lack of accountability for your actions, or a lack of responsibility for the results of your actions. And I think that that has just a shit ton to do, again, with how you're brought up. Like, were you brought up to take accountability? Were other people accountable for your actions your entire life? Have you pushed off all of your accountability onto other people? And sometimes it's okay to do so. Like if my manager comes to me and tells me that nobody got paid and it's all my fault, I'm gonna look him right in his eyes and tell him to shut his stupid fucking mouth because I'm not accountable for that. I'm not the manager. That's on you. That's perfectly fine to push off the responsibility onto somebody else because it's not my responsibility. But if you just switch the roles, really, if I'm the guy saying that and I'm the manager, then I'm being toxic because I'm pushing off my responsibilities onto other people and trying to make it their problem. It's like I'm getting paid regardless. So that's not a big deal. And I'm probably getting paid more because nobody else got paid. So there's more money for me to go around. Like, so I'm already, being egocentric, being selfish, and thinking about myself before I think about my teammates. But that's toxic. There's no reason to have to do that when I could just be responsible. Hey guys, huddle up. Look, I fucked up. I was real sick that day, or maybe I was tired, or just forgot completely. Sometimes that happens. We pretend like everybody's infallible, and when they make a mistake, that's the biggest thing in the world. It's like maybe I just made a mistake. We also got to let people make mistakes. Different show, but I think like if you get to a point where you observe yourself, you get a little bit introspective, and you're like, wow, I'm pretty toxic, and that's the last thought. Like that's the only thought. As far as that thought goes, I think you should isolate yourself from society and think a little bit more. Frankly, not like go off in the woods, or maybe go off in the woods, but not like live in the woods. But truly think about what you just said. Like people with that shit in their bio, people with that shit on their Tinder profile, wherever. People with shirts that say it in big old fucking bedazzled, sparkly shit right on the tits, right? Why is that cool? Like, actually think about that. You think that's like hot? Do you think guys find that hot? Girls find that hot? Hey, maybe a little bit in like the bad boy sort of way, but do you really want to be with somebody who wants to be with you just because they think that you're a bad person? Hey, come on. Like actually put some thought into it. Do, do you really think that toxicity is going to take you where you want to be in life? And it might, truly. I hate to say it. I mean, we always talk about how cheaters never prosper. Okay, tell that to Bill Gates. Tell that to Jeff Bezos. Tell that to Elon Musk. Tell that to blah, 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 like any other billionaire. Like cheaters prosper constantly. You just got to be really good at it. That's toxic too, but that's a whole different level that I'm not prepared to talk on.
And
But
just to continue adding on to that, I was going to mention the other side of it as well. If you know someone is toxic and you continue to choose to engage with them,
oh shit, yeah, yeah,
there is something toxic inside you that is attracting you to that. Because, and I'm not trying to point fingers and say anyone who jumped into a bad relationship with someone toxic, you're toxic as fuck. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying if you're getting into a relationship, business relationship, friendship, romantic relationship with someone who has said, hey, I'm toxic, they have clearly demonstrated toxic behaviors, or they are continuing to show you, hey, I'm toxic, you need to stop, freeze, like stop everything you're doing and examine, why am I here? Why am I in this situation? Because I've done it before myself. Been in a toxic romantic relationship because I was trying to fix the other person.
yep,
You can't fix toxicity in someone else. That is a choice. That is a learned behavior at times that people continue to like willingly continue with, or they eventually choose to change. But
yeah,
there is nothing that one person can do on your own to make someone change their toxic behaviors. They have to choose that for themselves. So just the other side of it, make sure that you are not willingly attaching yourself to toxicity.
Absolutely. And just I guess to piggyback off of that, and we'll start to round it up a little bit. Only only you. Only you can choose to.
Now you got to do it now. Only
Yeah.
you.
Oh shit! It caught me. It fucking got me. Only you can prevent toxicity. But seriously though, only you can decide whether or not you're going to be toxic. And I'm not saying that like it's an easy choice to make. Truly, like let me to anybody who might hear this, like fan or not, friend or not, family, whatever, doesn't matter. Anybody who might hear this that thinks like, oh, I'm gonna do me, I'm gonna do me, I'm gonna fucking, I'll be toxic all day if I feel like it. It's like, yeah, that's that is a choice. That is a perfectly valid choice. If you want to be toxic for the rest of your life, go ahead. Man, woman, mask, femme, other, neither, both, I don't care. Truly. My thought process, though, is the following. The moment that being toxic no longer works out for you is the moment you are going to be more lonely in your life than you have ever been before, and nobody's going to be able to help you. I spend a
Also,
lot of what's up?
also the accountability, because now when the consequences come, there are no help me, save me, whatever. Now, hold yourself accountable.
It's just you.
Just you by yourself. So go ahead, bro.
Yeah, like people that are toxic for that long with a huge asterisk for like rich people and famous people and like hyper sexy people, I guess, like normal people, people like the folks, all three of y'all that are gonna hear this. Normal motherfuckers that are toxic can't be toxic forever. It's not possible. You lose folks. I'll give a personal example since you gave one. I feel like it's only fair. Like my dad, like he left as well, and I'm not really cut up over it or anything. It was, sad at the time, but I was like 4, and I'm very much better off for him leaving. But that dude has damn near burned through every bit of goodwill he had with anybody that he could have had any kind of will with. And like it ends up being this situation where he's literally begged me on the phone before. Literally begged me to talk to him. And I can't do it. That dude still owes me a lot of money. And I don't mean like in, like child support that I'm just trying to claim. I mean, like I let him borrow money from me when I was in college, no less. He went to jail and couldn't pay me back. Just to really put that in perspective. Hey, Dad, if you end up seeing this, by the way. But he owes me like several $100s, and with interest, it's well off into the thousands because that was years ago now. Like we had an agreement, couldn't do it. I decided I wasn't going to talk to him because he had completely forgotten he owed me money and decided to try to yell at me over things that weren't my fault, were completely outside of my control. The day one of the worst people I've ever met in my life decided we were breaking up. Like I told him I had just gotten broken up with, and he somehow turned the whole thing around. And this is true, turned the whole thing around to how he doesn't like my hair. Just
Now,
one more time, like to really, really drive this point home. Dated the most toxic motherfucker I have ever met. Not that I've ever dated, the worst human being I have ever met in my entire life. Still won't do names because that's a suable offense on that one. Literally dog shit incarnate. We broke up and he calls me. Hadn't talked to him in a while, was already starting to kind of distance myself. And somehow he turned that whole thing around into you're never going to get a good job if you still have that haircut. It was an afro, by the way. At that point, I had not had an afro in well over half a year, and he had no idea. He just really wanted to drive that point home. So I haven't talked to him in
Just so we're
years.
clear,
What's up?
just so we're clear, yes, white people touching black people's hair is a toxic behavior. Fix that,
Oh yeah,
please.
100%.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
quick, quick ad break. Hey, or anti-ad break. Don't shop at McDonald's. Pay me money and I'll say shop at McDonald's. But up until that point, don't shop at McDonald's. Second commercial. Don't touch black people's hair without their permission. Real shit. I'd let you touch my hair, but you better ask first. I really don't give a shit, but you're not just gonna run your fucking hands through my hair. That's fucking gross. I just start doing it to white people now. Everybody who touches my hair, I immediately just grab a chunk of theirs out the back. Look, like, it sounds like I'm joking. I swear to God, I've assaulted people for that shit.
That visual is hilarious.
Absolutely. Because it's like, oh, dude, what are you doing? Bitch, you just did that. Shut up. Anyway, so yeah, I was done with him. He then tried to rat on me to his older sister. My aunt loved that woman. By the way, Aunt Gwen, happy birthday. This is late, but I already wish you happy birthday. But now it's set in stone. Happy motherfucking birthday. You're a queen, and you should be treated like one. Um, he told his sisters, he told his parent, told his mom and dad on me. What a little bitch. Like, and he was like, oh, my son won't talk to me. Boo hoo hoo. Won't say nothing to me. I give him so much love and affection via text and gifts, and he won't say anything in return. A boo hoo hoo. Like, then they'll call me because they are now unwittingly pawns in his toxicity. And it's making their lives worse. But he's using them to try to make my life worse, whether he realizes it or not. And it seeps into everything. I still don't talk to that nigga. Fuck him. But like it seeps into everything. And now it's gotten to a point where more and more people have stopped discussing things with him. He's also, for people that don't know the guy, like I'm talking to you, obviously, but people that don't know him at all, he's done
Right.
way, way worse shit than this. This is like the end of an era, so to speak. The stuff I've mentioned is child's play, truly. Uh, we're talking like going over country lines with weaponry that would have technically been drawn back to me without my knowledge. That type of shit. That level of toxicity. So yeah, I'm not being petty. We're being genuine on this. Point is, he now has nobody unless he starts trying to con more people to be in his life. And that only lasts for maybe a year, maybe 3 years tops. And you got to be extra gullible for it to last 3 years because he's just preying on people's kind nature by this point. And that works for a while, but he's bad at it. He's rusty. He's old, you know? So he has nobody now because that's what happens when you're a normal nigga and you try to be fucking toxic all the time. Even if that's all you know, even if, you're just like, oh, I'm just a con man because that's all I know how to be. That old dog better learn a new trick quick because that shit's not gonna fly long term. Sorry, like that's just how it is. But I think, like I said earlier, I think the truest antidote to toxicity is just general accountability, self accountability. By the way, nobody should have to tell you to stop being a little bitch. Like you should be able to say, hey, I need to take accountability for these actions I'm doing. If I'm doing something that's negative towards somebody else, even if it helps me immensely, I could I could go down the street right now and just rob everybody I see and probably come back with a couple $1,000s. Doesn't make it good. It's good for
Not
me,
at
yeah.
all.
But that's not how society works. Being toxic is not cool. That's why I can't get behind Cardi B. Yeah, I'm about to make it about Cardi B. Shut up and buckle in. Like when Cardi B got called out for drugging those dudes and taking their money and leaving, that's when I was off it officially. I was like, I mean, female rappers have a hard time. I get that. So I try to support them when I can, but I can't support somebody who's doing some shit where if the masculine and feminine roles were reversed, that motherfucker would be under the prison. He'd probably be shot dead by somebody's brother right now on some other toxically masculine shit. Frankly, this lady danced for money, probably did a little something on the side. That's her business. But then some of that side hustle turned into drugging people and robbing them. Now, is that gangster? Yeah, I'd say that's pretty goddamn gangster. Is it good though? No, that's toxic as shit. And now she's like an icon for some people. It's like, no, nigga, that's like bad. That's bad people stuff. That's like Weinstein type shit. That's Epstein type shit, you know? I mean, granted, they both did like the actual sexual bit of it, but that's not what she wanted. She wanted the money. She took the money. It's the same shit. Like, it's not about what you did necessarily. It's about your intention behind what you did in this scenario. So yeah, I can't get behind that. She's still not really taking accountability for it, and nobody's making her take accountability for it. So we're all a little bit what's the word? Like we all have a part to play in people like that toxicity. We're all not holding people accountable, which means that we all have to like notice and be open when people are being toxic. And instead of just being on Twitter like, actually, that's toxic masculinity, or actually, that's toxic femininity. You're being hella toxic right now. You're like toxic AF, patent pending. Anyway, you you have to actually call it out. Not call it out like saying, oh, that's toxic. Call it out like saying, hey, all that shit you just said about the woman speaking in the video that we're watching, why did you say that? Oh, because I think she's a fat bitch. Okay, how can she change that? Well, she should go on a diet. You don't know that. What if she's on a diet? Well, then she should fucking exercise. You don't know she doesn't exercise. So how was that criticism at all? How'd that work? What was the point of that? Where do you go from there? You know? What what can you do with the information, the inherently negative, toxic information you just spewed out there? What are we supposed to do with that? Well, shut the fuck up. You don't know anything. Okay, cool. So you were just being toxically masculine. You want to talk that out? You want to see why that's happening the way it's happening? Or what are we doing? Same thing with ladies. Like when a lady pops on somebody's video like that, I forget his fucking name. Real thin dude, always wears suits, calls women fat and shit like that.
Oh, you're talking about Kevin Samuels?
Yep. Like, now, do I agree with that guy? Not really, but sometimes he has a point. Just gonna say that right off the bat. Feel free to drop your hate comments right in the trash. But sometimes he does have a point, and he's really just hitting toxic people with the same toxicity, but from the other direction, which is why I appreciate the content he makes. I don't agree with it, but as a form of parody and satire, I love it genuinely. Like I find it fucking hilarious, but I have to also be willing to, understand like, hey, this isn't great. Like if people take this shit seriously, it's not the greatest thing in the world to be watching because eventually you're just going to confirm toxicity within yourself and toxic traits and attributes within yourself. And you're going to put that out in the world, and then other people are going to see that, and like, they're not going to take any constructive criticism because you're not being constructive, you're just being critical. Then they're going to get toxic, and you're perpetuating the cycle. So what we need to do, like not the Kevin Samuels of the world, we got enough of those. And I'm not saying they need to stop what they're doing by any means. Again, I find that shit absolutely crucial for at least somebody out there to be like, yeah, I am being kind of hypercritical of other people and not of myself. I shouldn't be saying I want to snag me up a football player as though they were a Pokemon card and then get pregnant by them and then leave them so that they can continue to pay me to sit on my ass all day at a whopping 344 pounds, 6 ounces. And I should be looking at myself and what I can do for myself to be a better person for somebody I actually want to be with, someone who's going to enrich my life, somebody who's going to be there for me through the good times and the bad times and everything else that's in pre-written vows. You know, like it should really be the self accountability to be able to say to yourself, Everything I do should be beneficial, if not to me, then to the world. And nothing I do should be toxic because toxicity isn't inherent. It's not something that has to happen, except for in babies. But that's why we don't date babies. That and like a myriad of other reasons. But, but like, you got, you have to think about your life almost from a third person perspective and see how you're doing things that are toxic to other people. That's why I always like, I don't do the whole like, oh, can white people say the N word debate? I don't even get into it. Because the moment you get into that shit, you're talking to somebody who's just being toxic. 9 out of 10 times. Some people actually do mean it. They're not gonna say it or anything, but they're just like, what's up with that? I've heard different stuff here and there. It's like, okay, yeah, that's an actual conversation that can be had. But when you're like, well, I should be able to say it, it's like, okay, then fucking say it. Clearly you got a bone to pick about something that's not really involving this. So by all means, say it. Say it in the middle of Compton, midday, June 3rd. Do that for me, and you can do it anywhere else in the world. Make sure to wear bright red. Like, like fucking do it. Like I don't care. The point is, you need to be able to be held accountable, and you should be the first person to hold yourself accountable for anything you do, anything you say, do, every action that comes from you or from people that you care about. You should be able to say, well, this is what they meant. Even if it was negative, this is what they meant. It wasn't intended to be that way. And if it comes off that way to somebody, and this is crucial, and where I'll end my turn and we can start wrapping it up. If you say or do something, or your party, your people say or do something that comes off toxic, and that's going to sound real shitty, especially with, the black white beef or the Republican Democrat beef, even if it's your people, right? That start popping off with the dumb shit, you still got to apologize. You still got to humble yourself a little bit. Now you can say like, "Hey, this shit, that's not me. That's not me at all. I would never say that. I would never do that." Right? But that's still your people. That's still your folks. Like I'm not pro America because America's been doing some fuck shit for like the longest. But if I talk to somebody over, I'm not gonna say Afghanistan. That's too ripe. What, Baghdad maybe? somewhere else, somewhere not Afghanistan, but Afghanistan adjacent, right? If they're like, "Oh, Americans fucking suck. They did this shit. They killed my uncle or whatever." I mean, I didn't do shit, frankly, so I don't have anything to apologize for. But America's my nation, right? Their choices reflect on me whether I want them to or not. So the very least I can do, and in some cases the most I can do, is say, "Look, I don't agree with what we're doing. I don't like what's been done, and I am incredibly sorry. I take no responsibility, but I will take accountability for my nation. They do dumb shit. They do. I don't agree with it. I didn't vote on that. Or if I did, then, depending on the time frame, if I did, then I definitely voted against it. But I don't have my finger on the button, you know? I'm sorry it happened. I wish I could turn it around, but I can't. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. That's what
And
makes me.
that's really all you can do, bro. I mean, that's honestly the whole thing is that just toxicity is going to breed toxicity.
Absolutely.
If it's not held in check, it's going to be kind of like the whole idea that like darkness is going to be darkness, no matter what you do until there's one shred of light. And in this instance, that shred of light is going to be accountability. So that's holding yourself accountable for your actions. That's holding your friends accountable to the standard that you agreed on.
Yep.
Because there's a certain standard that you hold friends to.
Yeah.
Friends don't get to just walk all over you. And I'm talking about real friends, not Facebook friends, not Twitter followers. I'm talking about your friends, actual people who you talk to on a daily basis. They don't get to be toxic in relationships. Hold them accountable. And if they are unwilling to change, then you understand where that line is drawn.
Yep.
Hold your people around you accountable. If you work at a place and people are stealing money, doing all types of stuff, to a certain degree, it's not your business, but to a certain degree, hold people accountable. Just being real.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I wasn't sure how you were going to tackle that one. I was really interested. I was like, people are stealing from your business. Get in where you fit in. You feel me? No.
To a certain degree, it's not your business. But to a certain degree, if you saw something and didn't say nothing, they can hold you accountable for that.
Yep. And they will. And
they'll
will
fire you real quick. So that's a decision that you're gonna have to make. Hey, they stole $50 at the thing. I'm not trying to snitch on nobody, but if something comes back, it's coming to your head too. So
exactly.
Hold yourself accountable. Hold other people around you accountable to the standard that we all agree on. There's a societal contract. We've all signed our names on a dotted line, whether we realize it or not. If you want to be a part of this society, you want to be part of this culture, there's guidelines you have to live by. So go ahead and wrap us up, bro.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. For folks that are on YouTube, we do this on stereo really sporadically. So if you catch us there, you are a real one. On YouTube, obviously, we are at jeniusAF. That's little J, big AF. And yeah, I think that's going to be it for us today. Move with love in your heart and in all things peace. You take it easy, all right?
All right, you too, bro.
Peace.
Man.